Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After running through the news you need to know about, we will be answering fans' questions, and I promise this week we're definitely going to get to the fan Q&A. Obviously, the draft happened and we just kind of lost track of time, so I apologize for that, but definitely this week we're going to run you through the fans' questions. So let's get into the news you need to know about. Obviously, the biggest news story of the day, a very sad day for Dolphins Nation. Just in general, Dolphins fans across the world, obviously former players, just a very, very, very sad day that Coach Shula has passed away at the age of, I believe, of 90 years old. One of the most underrated coaches of all time. Clearly, if you wanted to make an argument, he's definitely, I would say, top 10 across all sports in terms of coaches. If you have to rank 10 of the best coaches who dominated in their sport, he has to be on that list. He's the top 3 NFL coach of all time, top 3 football coach of all time, the winningest coach in NFL history. I think he's the first coach to go to, I think he went to 6 Super Bowls, and he did that before, obviously, Coach Belichick topped that recently. So he was an underratedly dominant figure in football that not a lot of people talk about, how dominant he actually was. Obviously led the only undefeated team, but before he was even a Dolphin, won an NFL championship before the Super Bowl was a thing. Obviously went to a Super Bowl with the Colts, fell short with obviously their backup quarterback with Earl Morrall, but was underratedly dominant. Obviously there wouldn't be a Dolphins, we wouldn't have any Dolphins fandom to really, and dominance, if we just wouldn't be the Dolphins. All the heritage, everything that you look back on wouldn't have been able to, obviously been possible if it wasn't for Coach Shula. A very underrated drafter in terms of just building teams. Obviously you think about what he did with Dan Marino, which was an easier pick than most, but he built some of the best teams in NFL history over his time as a head coach, and again, does not get talked about enough as one of the more dominant figures in sports. I mean, he was Coach Popovich before Coach Popovich. He was Coach Saban before Coach Saban. He was Coach Belichick before Coach Belichick. He was one of the most dominant coaches. And I say this, I'll say this 10,000 more times, super underrated. Does not get talked about enough. I feel like when you hear coaches get talked about often, it's either Bill Walsh. Even George Halas gets talked about more than Coach Shula does sometimes. Obviously, Bill Walsh gets talked about more than Coach Shula, which is, to me, insane. Even Tom Landry gets talked about more than Don Shula does. And he was way more dominant than any of those guys. It's not even close. So, again, he's still the winningest coach in NFL history. Dominated wherever he went. And was just set a culture and set a standard for the franchise that is the Miami Dolphins. There wouldn't be a Miami Dolphins if it wasn't for Coach Shula. So, God bless that man. Obviously, he's in a better place now, and, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to that family and all of his former players. Obviously, the 72 anniversary party will obviously fill a huge hole will be left. I mean, it's very, very sad. So, moving on from the obviously a very sad story, and hard to move on from, because you could talk about Coach Shula for a million years. But I do feel like he's underrated and not talked about enough. Let's move on from a very, very sad story to this next news story. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins have signed safety Kayvon Frazier. A 4-year contributor, Kayvon Frazier will move on to his second team. The Dolphins are signing the free agent safety, according to his agent. Frazier played in 44 games with the Cowboys, starting 2 after Dallas drafted him in 2016. He was a 6th-round pick out of Central Michigan. He primarily functioned as a special teams player during his time with the team. Frazier spent most of last season on Cowboys IR, landing there late in September. I don't think Kayvon Frazier is going to make the team, and if he does, he'll be a special teams player. But if you look at the roster, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of potential really good special teams players on this team. You think about Fedulum, who has always been a very good special teams player. He also plays safety. So it's just going to be really hard to make the roster if you're in that safety room right now. There's so many good, there's just so many good special teams players. The depth there right now is pretty crazy. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see who ends up starting at free safety. I really do feel like strong safety is pretty much a lock. Eric Rowe is just such a great fit. And rewatching some Dolphins games recently, Eric Rowe, underratedly, him and Nick Needham need to be talked about more. They had a very good end of the season, and it's actually crazy how well Eric Rowe played in this system at strong safety. It's actually insane. From where he started to where he ended up in the season, it's just amazing. So I feel like that strong safety spot's pretty much on lock, but the free safety spot, in my opinion, should be wide open. Bobby McCain, even going back and watching some of those games, his best game was against the Colts, and even in that game, he had a couple shake-your-head moments. He's just not a very good free safety. He's undersized. He's not a good open field tackler. He can't play in the box if we, ran a cover one blitz. Maybe he's a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. He's kind of a liability if you want to rotate your safeties as well. I just don't really like him at free safety. So hopefully that gets filled with a more natural player at that position. Even if we have to start the rookie, then that's fine with me. At least he's going to develop there. I feel like he fits the system well. And I think he's just more natural at it than he is. He's obviously bigger, physical, even better athlete, stronger, taller, all of that stuff. I think his game fits more at free safety. I can't remember. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. Jones out of Texas, and I think his skill set just fits better at free safety. So again, the Kayvon Frazier signing, a lot of moving parts in that safety room. It's going to be interesting to see what that room looks like with the 53-man roster, and what the secondary looks like in general. I think it's going to be. There's a lot of talent, especially at corner. And especially if you move Bobby to slot corner, it's going to be a very competitive position. Let's move on to the next news story. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Chargers really liked Tua Tagovailoa at number 6. I thought this would be an interesting story. With the number 6 pick at the NFL draft, the Chargers found their new quarterback and Oregon product, Justin Herbert. But even if he wasn't there, GM Tom Telesco says he would have taken a quarterback no matter what. Tom said, quote, the Chargers GM, he said, quote, "We felt great about all the quarterbacks who went in the top 6. Hopefully we won't pick at number 6 very often, and if we do, I won't be making picks here anymore. If you're going to pick this high and there's potential franchise quarterback there, you have to take him." So yeah, he pretty much confirmed if we would have taken Herbert, Tua would have went 6. I thought there was a lot of speculation. Well, what would happen to if... I thought it was an interesting conversation. What would have happened to Tua if we didn't take him? And clearly, he wasn't going to fall. And obviously, that was the narrative going into the draft. That Tua, where the heck is Tua going to go? He might go to Oakland. He might go to New England if he falls that far. So, I think we got a lot of clarity of where everybody else's head was at in the league. In terms of there was more than just us who was willing to take him there. Everybody's like, oh, what a ballsy move by the Dolphins. It's not really that ballsy when you have a player like Tua on the board, who is such a good player. I could just rave about Tua for a long time. He's underratedly good. I think he's gotten a lot of hate over these last few months because of the injury situation. But when it comes down to him actually playing the position, and let's not talk about injuries for a second, you just talk about him playing the quarterback position. One of the most seasoned and he was just born to play the position. I have never seen, at least especially in recent memory, a quarterback come out of college who can scan the field like he does, who just literally goes through every single one of his reads, and who manipulates. And it's, usually when you see quarterbacks, and I'm gonna hurry this up as fast as possible because I don't want to make this into a Tua thing, but I've never seen a young quarterback, and I think I've said this before, manipulate the back end. And I think a lot of people, this is why people compare him to Drew Brees, because Drew Brees does this. His first game playing in an Alabama uniform in a game, in a meaningful game, where he was dependent on to win the game, was in a national championship game. And what does he do? This is his first real game action. He looks off the safety in a cover 2. He completely ignores, he sees it, he feels it. This is why he has great instincts. Comes back to it and just lays it in there. Obviously, it wasn't the greatest play by the safety, and that's not even the best example of it. But the way Tua manipulates the back end with his head, and this is something you see veteran quarterbacks in the league do all the time, is not something you see in young quarterbacks. He really was born to play the position. I cannot wait to see. Whenever Tua is ready, obviously, I'm all for the redshirt thing. But a very special player that I feel like gets a lot of hate, but when you actually break down his game, is a very, very, very good player. If we're not talking about the injuries, I understand obviously it's not something you can ignore, but when you talk about just him playing the position, not a whole lot of people that are like him at that stage of their game coming out of college that do some of the things that Tua does. It's actually pretty crazy. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins have waived defensive end Taco Charlton. The Dolphins will move on from one of their first-round defensive linemen. They waived Taco Charlton on Thursday. Miami initially claimed Charlton off of waivers from Dallas last season. Charlton did not live up to expectations with Dallas, who used a first-round pick on him in 2017, but did lead the 2019 Dolphins in sacks with 5 despite playing in only 10 games with Miami. No other Dolphin totaled more than 3.5 last season. Okay, first of all, Taco Charlton was literally he didn't even play in some games. Like, he was a huge for his size and strength, and I even, just because by watching him, I was like, he doesn't look that big of a dude, but if you actually look, he's actually a pretty big dude. He's like 6'7", I think, close to 6'7", close to 300 pounds, and he can't, I don't know where all of that weight goes. He's probably like the least strong defensive end of that size I've ever seen in my life. He is such a liability in the run game. It's actually crazy. And he's not that great of a pass rusher. He's not a great athlete. He's just not a very good player. And, it is what it is, dude. He was contributing heavy minutes to that 2019 Dolphins defense. And he just was not very good. Take with that what you will. I think the biggest news story here is how bad everybody did with pass rushers. What was it in the 2017 draft? Like, you talk about people dropping the ball, and that particular year, people were hyping up the pass rush unit in that draft, and it just has not really lived up to the expectations with the amount of, especially in the back end of the first round, of pass rushers that went off the board. It's just very underwhelming. And speaking of the 2017 draft, this next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins to trade Charles Harris to the Falcons. Now, this obviously happened. It's an official thing. Charles Harris is a Falcon. The Dolphins have agreed to trade defensive end Charles Harris to the Falcons in exchange with Atlanta. Atlanta will send a 2021 7th-round pick for Charles Harris. So that's the deal. We get a 7th-round pick. They get Charles Harris. Where do you even begin with Charles Harris? We all love TJ Watt going into that draft. It ended up not happening. I myself had to talk myself into this pick. I did do that, and it just didn't work out, man. The whole thing, he couldn't set the edge, all that stuff. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't finish when he got to the quarterback. And if you want to bring up pressures, he didn't even do that on a consistent basis. His sack production obviously was terrible. His run defense was an issue. Overrated athlete. Didn't see a lot of explosion. The first step deal, he has the best. That was the big thing about Charles Harris coming out of Missouri. His first step is ridiculous. Never really saw that in the pros. He was a weird one, man. I remember him coming into training camp, and we'll get off Charles Harris after this, where Jason Taylor said he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Hard worker, obviously. Just wasn't a very talented dude. And the whole, Omar Kelly tweeted, hey, man, he fits better at 3-4 outside linebacker. Yeah, right. You still have to set the edge in that position. Good luck with that. I just don't see Charles Harris, even as a pass rush specialist, he's not that good. You know, I don't know if the development of him not getting a lot of reps in games due to the fact that he's just such a liability on all 3 downs hurt his development. I don't know what the heck happened with him. You know, sometimes you're just not that good, and it was just a miss of a pick. It was just a miss. What can you do? Speaking of misses and drafts, we're actually going to be doing a new series. I don't know how long the videos are going to be, but we're going to be doing a redraft series where we're going to redraft every draft of the 2010s and what the Dolphins should have done, why the Dolphins got it wrong, and just some of the first-round picks and moves. I think it'll be fun to relive some of those drafts. So hopefully you guys look forward to that. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Former Dolphins Bears tight end Deion Sanders retires from the NFL. You know, yeah. I think we drafted him, what was the 6th round, maybe? Out of Michigan State. I don't remember what round, but a later round pick. Was a good run blocker in that 2016 team. Just never really developed into an all-around tight end. But yeah, good player. And he's retired. Excuse me. This next 2 story is actually pretty interesting. The Dolphins are going to try Robert Hunt at right tackle. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Some slotted Louisiana's offensive line prospect Robert Hunt as a better guard fit than tackle in the NFL, but the Dolphins will station their 2nd-round pick at right tackle to start his career. Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald writes, Hunt would then compete with incumbent Jesse Davis, why I messed that up, who graded outside Pro Football Focus's top tackles last season at right tackle, and then slide inside to guard if the Dolphins decide he's not good at tackle. Davis will be the Dolphins' first stringer when camp opens. Per Salguero, should Hunt prove to be a better fit at guard, he can compete for the spot opposite recently signed Eric Flowers. So, sneakily, the offensive line interior position is going to be super competitive. I mean, you think about some of the lineups that could potentially happen. First of all, I don't know how when you watch Robert Hunt play, you're not like, that's a guard. Like, I don't understand. Like, listen, we're gonna try this right tackle stuff. I don't think he's anywhere as good as Jesse Davis, or will ever be as good as Jesse Davis in a pass blocking, from the pass blocking perspective. I just think Jesse Davis very good at pass blocking, especially for right tackle. He's just not a very physical. And if we're gonna run this power run scheme, I just don't see Jesse Davis succeeding in that at guard. I just never liked him. I don't think at guard he's not physical enough. He's never been a good run blocker in my opinion. Even though Omar Kelly says that, I just disagree. And yeah, I would rather have Jesse Davis at right tackle. Robert Hunt, like I said, when you watch him play, to me, he's a guard. Every big play and good play and positive play, all of them are in the run game. He's a big dude, physical dude, athletic dude. I just feel like he's a better a better guard than he is a tackle. We'll see how things shake out, but me personally, I think he's going to be a better guard than tackle. We'll see how things happen. And again, Jesse Davis played good minutes, and gave us a lot of good snaps at right tackle last year. People need to go back and watch the last 2 months of the season and just relive some of this stuff. Now, don't watch the beginning of the season. It's painful. It sucks to go through. It's as bad as you remember it being. But the last 2 months of the season, or month and a half of the season, were really good, and you really started to see where this organization is headed. It's all very positive, but within that, there's some good, like Jesse Davis played very well. Isaiah Ford was a sneaky good player. Alan Hurns had some good moments. He just had a lot of drops, but he was getting open on a consistent basis. Like, there's some sneaky little things there that you guys should go check out. Like, there was this receiver core sneakily good. I feel like Alan Hurns, if he can just, I don't know what happened to him last year. in terms of fumbles and drops. If he can just clean that stuff up, because that hasn't been a problem for him. Obviously, coming after injury, maybe that had some effect on him. But if Allen Hurts can clean that stuff up, he could be a very good slot receiver. And that's some of where his biggest plays came from, was inside. And then Isaiah Ford took his job because Allen Hurts was just playing super inconsistently. And Isaiah Ford did amazing. So, again, if you go back and watch the last month and a half of that season, a lot of good stuff, not only on offense but defense. Just to bring up a couple things here, Christian Wilkins played really good down the stretch of that game. I think it was his name, Zach Sealer, I think. I don't know. Hopefully I'm getting if I'm remembering his first name. Had some good games at defensive tackle down the stretch of that last month of the season. Nick Needham, underratedly good. Eric Rowe, like I said, played out of his mind at safety. Vince Beagle had some pretty good moments where I'm excited for his development. There's a lot of really good young players that were on the 2019 roster that just get overlooked because of all the roster moves that we made. But there were good players on this roster before any of those moves were made. They got a lot better as the season went on. And I feel like they're not getting enough attention for that. We're just forgetting about them. Like, this receiver core has speed. And I forgot Albert Wilson played. He looked like old Albert Wilson, especially in that Cincinnati Bengals game. Like, there were a couple plays there where, like, man, he's coming back, dude. And if he can get 100%, man, this receiver core could be very good. And Mike Gesicki, Omar Kelly brought this up. He obviously played really well. I mean, he dominated the Bengals game. I mean, he absolutely killed them. He played mostly his role. He basically, a lot of the routes that we ran with him was more slot receiver-esque than something like, if you saw Gronk in like a Josh McDaniels offense, which is basically what we ran last year. It was a little bit more finesse, and he succeeded at that very, very well, and I'm excited to see where he lands in Shane Gailey's offense too. So again, a lot of good players that kind of get overlooked and get lost in the shuffle that are still on this team, and this team obviously got a lot better. So very excited. That's it. That's it for the news, ladies and gentlemen. We discussed a lot of topics. Got a lot of interesting stuff here. I think that we do have one last news story. No, we don't. I apologize. We got it all. I thought we didn't. We got it all, though. So let's get into the fan Q&A. Sorry, guys. I didn't have it pulled up. Alright. Here we go. This first question comes from John Tree. He says, Skagalicious. Let's get... Oh, God. You know what? He says, let's get personal. We love listening to your show, but know so little about you. You know what? I think we're gonna have to keep it that way. I just, and he says, keep up the good work at the end of the question. And, I appreciate that. But we're just out here making videos. Maybe one day. This next question comes from Beef. He says, hey, Skags. I'm sure you're aware of the passing of Don Shula and how much he's meant to this team. With that in mind, what do you think the chances of Coach Flores having an undefeated season, let alone a Super Bowl victory? Well, having an undefeated season now is very difficult to do with the increase of games, with the whole different playoff structure. People don't really take into account that the season got longer, and it's a lot more difficult. Back in the day, there was no free agency, so you could really accumulate players. There's a lot of different factors in today's games, just a lot of different things. Teams pass a lot more, so you put the ball in harm's way more than you did in the 70s. So turnovers kind of go up. They do go up. Just different styles of game. So it's just a lot harder to go undefeated nowadays. So I would say very low that any team goes undefeated. But what are the chances he gets a Super Bowl win? I was thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of eerily similar things between the two coaches when you think about what they preach in terms of fundamentals, study, attention to detail, all that stuff. I mean, Coach Shula preached all that, and those are his biggest things. And their background both came from the secondary of the defense in terms of where they coached. I mean, Coach Shula played corner in the NFL. There's a lot of similarities between those two people when you talk about Coach Flo and Coach Shula. So, very similar in coaching style, very similar in background. Obviously, Brian Flores played linebacker, not defensive back, but coached defensive backs, and same thing with Coach Shula. So, similar upbringings, all that stuff. Coach Shula, I think, learned under, I believe, Coach Landry. It was Paul Brown. I think it was, yeah. So both learned under legendary coaches, and very similar backgrounds, man. It's very crazy. So what are his shots at getting a Super Bowl victory? I would say better than most. I would say better than every head coach since probably Jimmy Johnson, just by the way the team is being built. I would say this particular nucleus of players has the best shot. Like, if we're like, oh, let's fast forward 10 years, Back to the Future style, and you come back and you're like, and if you were to fast forward 10 years with any Dolphins team, this would be the one to do it, I feel like. Alright, just because of the young quarterback, all that stuff, so yeah. This question comes from TR3MC. Excuse me. He says, didn't hear or see much from our head coach Gailey's perspective. He said, didn't hear or see much from our head coach, offensive coordinator Gailey's perspective on the draft or free agency. Do you think he helped out or played in part in either? Do I think Coach Gailey played a part in the draft or free agency? Probably not. Maybe free agency, or I don't know. I mean, maybe. There would be no way of knowing that. I think he's pretty happy with his skill positions, but running back obviously was a huge issue before the draft and free agency. So maybe he had input there with running back in terms of preference that he liked, and stuff like that. But I don't think so. I mean, maybe I could see him having an input on the offensive line, but I think Coach Flo already had an idea of what he wanted. I mean, if we're running a power scheme, that's what we ran last year. So, we weren't pulling any, but there was no. It was a very I-form smash mouth type of a scheme. So, I think that's what Brian wants to do. So yeah. So, I don't think the guards had any. I don't think he had any input on that. Maybe the tackles he did. And stuff like that. I could see those positions, him having input on those particular players, running back and tackle. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, do you think we are giving up on Kalen Balash too soon? He had a tough season last year, but behind that O-line, nobody could succeed. I think he might surprise us this season behind a new, more physical line. Your thoughts? Here's the thing about Kalen. He looked like a completely different player than he did the year before that. I don't know what happened to him. I have no idea what happened to him. I swear to God, someone switched bodies with him. If you look at his rookie campaign the year before, where, especially in the Vikings game, he had over 100 yards rushing, was super explosive, wasn't as indecisive, which is something I really noticed watching him play. He just wasn't able to read anything, and he was very slow to do so, and it was just very odd. He got outplayed by two undrafted rookies and a guy that came off the street in Mark Walton. He just looked really bad. So is it too soon? Obviously, he's a talented dude. I don't really know what to say about Kalen Balash. I guess we'll see what he does behind an offensive line. One thing I will say to defend him, although he played terrible last year, Omar Kelly said, oh, there were running lines. No, there weren't. There was no running lanes. There haven't been running lanes behind that offensive line in 2 years. Like, to say there were running lanes and he missed them is egregious. Like, there were no running lanes. And he's talking about when Kalen Ballage played minutes. And that you're talking about, like, the first 2 months of the season. There were, trust me, no running lanes. Like, did you see any against Baltimore? Did you see any against New England? Those were his worst games. There were no running lanes. Like, maybe that did something to his psyche. I don't know. But there were no running lanes. That's absolutely ridiculous. So to defend him in that, to say that there were running lanes and he missed them, I think is ridiculous. This next question comes from Tech Me Out. He says, I wanted to pay homage to Don Shula. I met and took many pictures with him as a kid at St. Thomas University. Goes back a bit. Probably the most classy guy that I've ever met in football. He was a great coach, a great person, and a wonderful family man. And did a ton for the community. My greatest coach. The world will sorely miss him. God bless you, Coach. Great. Well, really well said by Tech Me Out. And I think we all, second that statement. This next question comes from SM. He says, Nick Needham and Preston Williams were my favorite players from 2019. Both undrafted free agents. Will we be so lucky again? If so, who? If you look at Chris Greer's undrafted record, it's been pretty good. So, he's got some pretty good players. Excuse me. In the past, a lot of really good special teams players. Do you think we'll be that lucky again to have two contributors at that? I don't know. I mean, that's very difficult to do. I mean, you could argue those two are the best out of the class in terms of undrafted rookies, even though I think Van Ginkel got kind of a bad rap, but he played, again, another player that played better at the end of the year. No, I don't know if we'll be that lucky again. I don't think so. Just because of how this team's just a lot more talented. I don't think a lot of those undrafted rookies are going to get as many reps as some of the ones that did last year. I mean, if you remember, Nick Needham got up to a very slow start to the year, then started to come on late and played way better. I mean, in preseason he did not look very good, and then just got way better. And then obviously Preston Williams was just amazing. Looked like a first round pick out there. So this next question comes from KaiRank100, I think is what his name. He says, early predictions on what our division will look like and Finn's record within that. I don't do predictions in terms of record, but on what our division will look like, it's going to be wide open. We can defend any team in the league if you look at our secondary. I'm pretty confident in saying that. It's just going to be how good will our run defense be. That's the only question mark. And I love our linebackers. It's just be interesting to see how this defensive line plays together, which I'm very confident will play very well. But I do think we can hang with anybody on defense. So I think that gives us a huge advantage in the division. And when you look at our offense, that was a top 10, obviously finished 12th overall, top 10 in the last month and a half of the season in terms of passing offense. Super one-dimensional team, but explosive on offense despite the bad offensive line. I think we're underrated in the division, and I think we're clearly, in my opinion, if you look at our defense, where I think, like I said, I just think we can match up with anybody. When you look at our defense, when you look at the offense and where it's going, I think us and the Bills are going to have it out. When you look at the Jets, and they lost talent, man, at the receiver position. I know they drafted Denzel Mims. They got better on the offensive line with Mekhi Becton. But that's it. That's all they really did. And their defense, to me, still has some major holes on it in terms of pass rush. I know they got the guy out of Florida. We'll see what he turns into. But the secondary, there's not a lot there besides Jamal Adams. And they're often, I mean, he has a rookie receiver that's unproven. We don't know how he's going to turn out. With our secondary, I just don't see them as much of a threat. Now I say that, and I don't know. I just don't see the Jets. They're not. I do not believe they're as talented as us. I just don't. With the coaching staff that we have, with the defense that we have, with how the offense, and first of all, when you look at, and I'll just leave it at this. I could talk about this for a long time, but when you watch both of those teams play, we should have swept them last year. And people said they had a better team than we did last year, and we should have swept them if it wasn't for a bad call at the end of the. We blew them out at home, and then we go up to New York. We didn't score a touchdown. I think we hit like 7 field goals or something crazy like that, and we get a super clutch sack at the end of the game. It was 4th and forever, and the ref throws a flag on a route that was 10 yards away from the first down. It was just an awful call. The ref should have been slapped in the face for that. So we should have swept them last year in sort of convincing fashion. If you look at what the Jets... And we didn't even have Preston Williams in the second game where the ref threw the bad flag. When you look at the game where we had Devontae and Preston, we dominated them, dude. Like, they could not defend those two players. They could not defend Preston, and they could not defend Devontae Parker. I don't see them getting any better at doing that this upcoming season, okay? And they still play the same scheme. And they still had Jamal Adams. And I just don't see them defending those two better. And Preston Williams is going to be a year better. So, I don't know. I just don't see the Jets as a threat. And the Bills... The Patriots, listen, until we know what their quarterback situation is, I'm not even going to have them in this discussion. I don't care. We all know how hard it is to win with the bad quarterback. And the whole argument that Bill O'Brien's Texans did it is a stupid one because that division was so bad. Like, it was very bad. Those were like double-digit loss teams, dude. And Luck was hurt. And when Luck was healthy, they won the division easily. So, I'm not even going to go there. So, I don't... I just, we know as Dolphins fans how hard it is to win with a bad quarterback. So I don't know how that situation is going to shake out. As of right now, I think it's between those two teams, us and the Bills. That's just my opinion. This next question comes from Charlie. He says, would you mind if Tua didn't play a single game this season? No, I wouldn't mind that at all. I'm excited to see where Josh Rosen does. I feel like that's not getting talked about enough. And he should be upset. If Josh is taking anyway, he shouldn't listen to the media at all. Because they're idiots. They're just morons. If you were Josh Rosen, you're getting on a team that's a year better in a system, in a culture. We added all this talent to it. The offensive line's going to be better, which benefits you. Hopefully you're a year better. And if this coaching staff is as good as we think they are at developing, if they can just coach out of him, just get rid of if there's nothing there, get rid of the ball. He's a pocket passer. He does not have the athleticism to extend plays. He needs to make quicker decisions with the football, and if he can just do that, he can be a very good pocket passer in this league. He just needs to get over that hump. And if he does, and maybe he does this year, with the most talent he's ever had around him, I'm interested to see where that takes us. So I'm excited to see. This quarterback room is very intriguing, man. It's very exciting. But for all those reasons, I wouldn't mind. If Tua redshirted, I would be very happy. And I love Tua. This next question comes from SM. He says, what safety that is currently on another squad will you make room for if he gets cut before the season starts? What safety would I... Oh, man. I don't really see any of them getting cut. A safety is a kind of important position. So I don't know. I can't even remember the last time a vet safety was cut. That was actually a good safety. I don't know how to answer that question. I'm not very sure. They had Demarius Randall was a free agent for a long time, and I felt like he fit the scheme perfectly, but he's a Raider now, so I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. This next question comes from Richard. He says, Bum Phillips once said that the only one to survive nuclear war was Don Shula and AstroTurf. Yeah, that's a good one. This next question comes from Bad Bandit. He says, do you think Preston Williams will be at full strength this season. Coming back from an ACL tear tends to take a year or two. Well, that's not true. I mean, I guess, definitely not true in recent times. I mean, Deshaun Watson did it, obviously plays quarterback. AP did it. I'm trying to think of ACL tears other than those two. Man, I can't think of any. Maybe there's a good example of, oh, well, this guy did it and he just never was the same afterwards. But I don't know. I don't think Preston Williams is gonna have that issue. He's super young. I feel like recovery for him is gonna be a lot easier. So I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I don't think it's something that. I think you're gonna see a better Preston Williams than you did a year ago, in my opinion. Plus, speed was never his like. He has sneaky speed. I mean, that was proven by using him on punt returns, and he actually did very well at that position. But he's a great route runner with great hands, and I think that's where his game really lies. This next question comes from John. He says, "What number do you predict or want to his jersey or number or his?" Oh, excuse me. I don't know why I butchered that. This question comes from John. He says, "What number do you predict that Tua will wear?" I don't want it to be a double-digit number. I would love it to be a singular number. 12 is obviously taken, 13. Those are the best double-digit numbers in my opinion, 12 and 13. So I would say, any of the single ones are fine with me. I guess 10 would be fine. That actually could be interesting if you wore 10. But if he wants to go, 8's a good one. I think that would be cool if you wore 8. Obviously, kind of got the Steve Young thing going on there. 4 is a good one. 3 I'm okay with. Any of the single digit numbers, I'm good. 9 is a good one too because of Drew Brees. This next question comes from 72A's Dolphins. He says, if you had to make an all Miami 53-man roster, who wouldn't be on it? Man. I can't think of any. That's a tough question, dude. There's, a lot of our players are young and have a bright future, so... Oh, man. That's a tough one. I don't know, man. I don't know. One of the first ones that came to my mind was Sam McGuavin. I think Sam McGuavin and Raekwon McMillan need to watch out. But I like Sam. I like both of those players a lot. I think Sam's going to be better. I think Raekwon's going to be better. And Raekwon had a good year last year, so I don't know, man. That's a tough one. This next question comes from Ethan. He says, "Hey, Skaggs, which Dolphins rookie and free agent signing will have the biggest impact on this team this year?" In terms of rookies, probably Weaver, Curtis Weaver from Boise. It's between him and Raekwon Davis. I think those two have the chance to have the biggest impacts right away. And in terms of free agent signings, Kyle Van Noy, I would say, and Byron Jones would be the two I would say. This next question comes from SM. He says, if Josh Rosen outplays Ryan Fitzpatrick in the preseason, does he get the starting nod? Yeah, if he outplays Ryan Fitzpatrick, he definitely gets the starting nod. This next question comes from Take Me Out. He says, "Hi, Skaggs. As Dolphins fans, I think the best outcome would be to hope that Rosen is able to win the starting quarterback position and have a solid year. The Fins would be in a very strong trade position going into the next year, and it would be reminiscent of the Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers situation the Chargers found themselves in at one time. I'm personally pulling for Rosen to win the starting position, and I think he has the talent to pull it off." That question came from Take Me Out in case I didn't say that. So Josh Rosen, very talented. Again, another player that just kind of is like, ugh, people just like don't care to even like give him the time of day anymore, which is weird. But I'm so happy that he's still here, and hopefully he still will be by the time in whatever offseason program we get. The most competitive quarterback room maybe in Dolphins history, dude. Like, it's insane in terms of talent. You got Tua, Josh Rosen, both top 10 quarterback picks, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who played out of his mind last year. So it's probably the most talented room at the quarterback position ever. So, in Dolphins history. So I'm very excited about that. And yeah, you can never have too many quarterbacks. So they're in a great position. And I think you're right. I think that would be a very good outcome if Josh ends up playing really well, and then the Dolphins are put in a very tough situation. The sixth question comes from Beef. He says, do you think Josh Rosen will put more effort to winning this season because of our improvement as a team, meaning we will see him put his greatest performance to date this upcoming season? Do you think Josh Rosen will put more effort into winning this season? I mean, he's always been a hard worker. That's never been an issue with him. It's just he's young, and he needs to get better at playing quarterback. That's what it comes down to. And when you look at Tua and Josh side by side, and when they both, it's an interesting thing because Tua's a pocket passer, and obviously he's a better athlete, and he's a better pocket passer than Josh Rosen ever was, and probably is right now, in terms of how refined they are at playing the position. But both have different qualities that make them great at doing it, and I'm excited to see. And both of them have great accuracy, even though I think Tua is way more consistent at it. Both of them have an opportunity to be very good pros. So the next question comes from Jagpack. He says, so maybe I'm wrong, but if Robert Hunt is not good at right tackle, then we're going to have 4 guards battling for 2 spots: Dieter, Flowers, Kinley, Hunt. Can we really trust Jesse Davis with Tua's blindside? Also, what was the point of signing Flowers if we just drafted 2 guards? Listen, the offensive line has been an issue for a long time. I think we can all be in agreement that we would all like to put that behind us in terms of just having a talented offensive line and having great depth there. That's something New England has prioritized, and that's something that Baltimore has prioritized for a long time. So now that we're doing it, people shouldn't complain about it, in my opinion. I mean, people bring up the fact that you could, maybe you could have gone Austin Jackson at 26, maybe you should have taken Xavier McKinney there. Some of the things that people have said about the offensive line position there. Listen, the offensive line needed to be fixed. They fixed it. They added as much talent as they could to the position. We'll see where it shakes out. And I feel like, you got to give yourself the best chance to figure that out. And I think they've done, whether that's signing free agents or drafting players. That was the weakest position on the team, and they did everything they could to make that not a problem anymore. And, that to me, that's the best thing they could have done. And they finally did it after 5 to 8 years of not doing it. So, good for them. Where will they all play? I feel like Dieter has a great chance to play center, and I know a lot of people aren't talking about that, but he really does. And when he did play center at the Senior Bowl, he played very well, and I'm excited to see where he lands. I mean, the whole interior offensive line is stacked in terms of talent, and different. What was the word I'm looking for here? I don't know. It kind of lost me there. Just different ways you could go. The possibilities of where people could play. There's just a lot of different things you can do on that interior, and can we trust Jesse Davis at right tackle? Yes. If you go back and watch those games, he wasn't the issue. Mainly it was the interior. Michael Dieter struggled in pass pro for most of the season. The left tackle position was an issue with Webb there. It was pretty much an issue. Jesse Davis was by far the best player on that offensive line and played very well. So only in pass protection. Like, he's a great pass protector, but when it comes to like a power run scheme, that's why I feel like you got to keep him at right tackle. But we'll see how things shake out. But it's the most talent that the Dolphins have had at that position, and especially interior, in a long time. And one of these players, and again, one of these things have to work, and just the odds of it, one of them have to work. So yeah, and obviously Ted Karras played very well for New England last year. So I'm very happy with what they did, and I'm sick and tired of defending it. If I had another person on the show that could, argue for the other side of it, that's fine. But when people comment things like, "Oh, this, and this, and that," it's not that I didn't know those things. It's because I did. It's just why would I bring them up? Like, again, it's hard to if I argue with yourself, for God's sake. So it's it's different if I had someone else on the show and they were like, okay, this, and this is the reason why I thought this was a bad idea, and then I could argue for the other side of it. Well, this, and this, because I feel like you could do that with all of it. Like, people are like, oh, well, they should have picked this guy. First of all, no one knows like the arrogance in that, in my opinion, of this guy is who they should have taken. And even me, like, I'm not saying that for any of these picks, by the way, except Tua. But the arrogance of be like, yeah, that's who they should have picked. Nobody knows until they all play on the field. So the fact that the Dolphins just accumulated talent on their weakest position on their football team, I just don't see the issue in that. Everywhere else is fine, dude. The defensive line got fixed, in my opinion, with free agency, and then they added to it in the draft. Not as much as they did with the offensive line, but they prioritized the offensive line. They did what they thought best was with that, and I'm happy with it. I'm done talking about that anyway. I just keep saying the same things anyway. You people have already heard it. You don't want to hear it again. So yeah, that's going to be a great question Jack packed in on, and yeah, that's it for this week. Very sad week for Dolphins fans. And yeah, I'm excited for this season. And again, I'm excited with the direction that this team's going in, and I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited for this defense. I'm very hyped to see it play, because I think we could hang with anybody. And matched out with the offense, I'm just excited. I think this is the most talent, this defense, and especially for the new age of the league, this is by far the best assembled and built. They're building it the right way, unlike the other time. We're like, the whole Adam Gase thing was, we just want to build a front that rushes the passer, because when teams get behind, this is literally his rationale and how they built the defense. We want to be ahead all the time. That's when the defense can play their best. It's like, all right, man, how about just build a good defense instead of just building it. Sorry, the dogs. Instead of building it that way, we're like, oh yeah, we're building a defense that's going to succeed when we have the lead. It's just like, that's not how all games are going to work. What about when you play from behind and they run down your throat, and he just didn't build the team that way, and it showed, and it was a big problem for many years. So it's just different philosophies. I think this defense is just built the right way, like I said, unlike some of the other ones in the past, and I'm excited for that. So I'm Skyx1383. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Support if you can. I don't know, like I said that like you're donating. Support if you want to. And I'm Skyx1383, and I will see you guys in the next one.